I would like to start. So I'm Piotr Kulczakowicz. I'm with the Quantum Startup Foundry at the University of Maryland. And I really wanted to start with showing you one cartoon here. I can't find it. Anyway, it was describing my job pretty well when I was starting it. All right. So I work with Julie Lanzer, Chief Innovation Officer at the University of Maryland. She couldn't make it to this event. And she's a founding director of Quantum Startup Foundry. I'm a program director. Also present is John Sawyer, who is interim president of Mid-Atlantic Quantum Alliance. And we all have hands in this baby called Quantum Startup Foundry. This is essentially a market accelerator for quantum-based startups. We have high hopes for many businesses started at the University of Maryland, but the Foundry is obviously open to any startup that is in the quantum space. And we define the quantum space very broadly. We have expertise at the University of Maryland with sensing, with communications, with quantum computing, and therefore our net is cast quite wide at the moment. The way we approach, we have all those incubators, startup accelerators, you name it. And the last thing we wanted to do was to replicate what's out there, right? We want to collaborate with what's out there. We want to build the industry together, if you will. So from get-go, we were thinking about providing things that we can provide uniquely that would address individual needs of the company. And we thought that would be the best way to advance those quantum startups. Quantum computing has this computing power, right? At the same time, quantum startup is exponentially more challenging situation, right? So this individual approach is at the core of our thinking about Quantum Startup Foundry. We are leveraging regional strengths and past successes. I come from the tech transfer office at the University of Maryland, and I worked with roughly 20 UMD spin-offs. They're still in business, and with some of them I had to do a lot of hand-holding well beyond my job description. So we are leveraging of that. We really want to connect startups participating in our programs with the nation's capital quantum ecosystem and provide them access to resources. And it's all happening through partnerships. A little bit of history. And this cartoon, maybe I'll find it at the end of the speech, because we started only in April. And March, April timeframe, I was starting a startup to help startups. That's the New Yorker cartoon I wanted to show you, right? Trying to figure out, how we do it, and and we have a nice team of people, John, Julian, and so on, to figure it out. But I'll take you quickly through history because I think we accomplished quite a bit in a few months. Officially, I took on the role of program director on July 1st, right? So I still have probably 2 jobs. We launched in April. We opened the website for registration immediately. And within a very short period of time from the announcement, we've got about 50 registrations. Broad spectrum of companies, from companies with substantial funding, both private and R&D products, and on the other end of the spectrum, a guy with maybe an idea that he thought he might be pursuing in the future. We talked to all those registered companies. The motto of our team is GSD, which is translated into get stuff done, or you can translate it slightly differently. So the idea was that we will launch things in parallel, as many as possible, as fast as possible, but with high degree of quality, right? So we talked to all those companies, and we sort of started picking up those that would be qualified for the first cohort of pre-traction. Pre-traction is for early stage companies, and it's a training-based program at this stage. In the meantime, we embarked on collaborations with founding partners. First, EY, a consulting company, then Mitre Corporation, and IonQ is another founding partner. We started shifting gears towards populating another of our programs, Traction, which is for later stage startups, and it's all about connectivity to the resources available in the region. The big event that we wanted to have, and we really pushed to have it for in-person by invitation, in combination with virtual, was Quantum Investment Summit that we had in October. Big success. And during that event, the Discovery Fund was announced. It's $1 million managed by the University of Maryland in funding. And first year of funding was earmarked for quantum startups. The scope of the fund is broader. We are now finalizing memoranda of understanding for initial batch of companies that go into Traction program, and this is in and out program for as many sprints as you want. This is a quick snapshot of those programs. So Traction, we want to make sure we can add value for the startup. It is startup centric. We want to understand what the needs are, what the priorities are. We want to map them against our capabilities and network, and design a bespoke program for participating startups. Pre-Traction is really for early stage to train them in obtaining non-dilutive funding and perhaps other basic training. Capital connections are about investor connections and seed funding. We have office and lab space. We are streamlining leases with the university, and we have a program for shared equipment, which is in progress. International soft landing, I'm skipping internships, and I'll talk about it in just a second. International soft landing from get-go, and I'll go back to this slide. Before we launched, Julie and John conducted several roundtables with almost 60 startups, global startups. We conducted some sort of customer discovery, right? I mean, we think about those startups participating in our programs as also customers. And we learned a lot from that, from those interviews. And we also learned that many of them will want to set up a shop in the US and hopefully in Maryland. Internships is something I added just yesterday to it because the recurring theme is, even today, I talked to Yuval from Classic, and he asked me, do you guys have like a job board at the university we can use to recruit people into our company? So this shouldn't be called internships, but more like talent. University of Maryland is a large computer sciences program with like 4,000 undergrads in computer sciences, big pool of talent, and also the university is working on creating quantum programming for, I guess, both graduate and undergraduate levels. So we want to tap those resources and provide a pipeline for both startups and other businesses. Couple of themes that are recurring from the conversation with those startups. Access to customers is critical. Access to equipment and test beds. Access to talent. This is like the theme of this conference, definitely in this group. There is definitely export control challenge potentially, hype challenge, and university IP licensing challenge potentially. We are building on great set of resources in the region. Just in the University of Maryland, we have 200 plus researchers in quantum, one of the top ranked quantum institutes in the world. We have 6 of different quantum institutes, and access to the latest IonQ computer quantum computing hardware through the National Quantum Lab QLab user facility, and so on. And all that in collaboration with Mid-Atlantic Quantum Alliance, which is just this picture of amazing resource we have in the region. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for giving me the chance to talk here today, to spend some time telling you about Duality. So I'm in this session for Q2E. It's about workforce needs, but I'm also in this kind of a sub-session about helping businesses get started. So I'll spend most of the time talking about Duality, but at the end, I'll kind of circle around to the topic of the main session and kind of try to tell you what I've learned about startups that are going through our program right now. And before I start, I should say that everything the previous speaker said about having a startup, about helping startups, resonates every single day. Like, we tell this to ourselves. So Duality is based in Chicago, and I just want to spend a couple of minutes to tell you why we think, why Chicago and why we think this is a great place to have an accelerator for quantum startups. And Kate Timmerman, who spoke before me in the first half of the session, laid the groundwork, told you about Chicago Quantum Exchange. But just to go over it quickly, as some of you may already know, the greater Chicago area has many really powerhouse institutions that have been doing investing very strategically over the last 2 decades or so in building up their quantum programs, resources, hiring talent to work in this field. And as a result, this area is really a hub for quantum. Within the CQE institutions alone, there's over 150 researchers who work in this area across all areas of quantum. We have some amazing resources, some amazing experimental and computational facilities that are all, many of them are user facilities. So this is an exceptional concentration of resources for a startup to advance technologies in this space. The other way. And for those of you who work with startups and deep tech startups, you'll be familiar with the idea that startups in this space often grow by one of the pathways through which they grow is partnerships with bigger companies, more mature organizations. And so it's really crucial to make sure you have access to customers and use cases and strategic partnerships. And the Chicago, generally the Midwest area, actually has a really diverse industry base, which is fantastic for quantum computing, for example. Like, there's a wealth of use cases, companies that are looking for people to help them understand these use cases. And then through CQE itself, like CQE has some about 30 corporate partners. We have really rich connections of people who are really looking to understand how to work in this field. And startups fit right smack in the middle of that. And we're leveraging this ecosystem to help startups grow their businesses. So coming to the program itself, for us, it's a 12-month program. It's a cohort-based program. A kind of a hybrid accelerator incubator program for early stage startups. We defined it for our first year. We're 6 months into our first cohort. It just launched in July of this year. For our first cohort, we defined this as startups that had raised less than $1 million in dilutive funding, which in this space, a lot of startups who are very early stage have often raised more than that. But we're also requiring these startups. These startups can be from anywhere, but we're requiring them to relocate to Chicago, or at least one of the founders or CEO to be relocated in Chicago full time to take advantage of our ecosystem. We're really committed to fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when we say this, we don't just mean by the composition of the startup team. Certainly we care about that, but also other aspects of the accelerator. So the vendors we work with, other professionals, mentors, instructors, as well as the staff themselves. So the program is designed as to provide business and technical resources to startups within an ecosystem in which they can thrive and grow. So our first year, we have 6 startups. 2 are hardware startups, 4 of them are software startups, 2 building simulation software packages, and 2 others quantum computing software platforms. I should mention that tomorrow, bright and early at 7:30 a.m., 2 of these startups will be pitching at the startup pitch session. So hopefully you can come to that and hear them speak and learn more about them. Coming back to Duality itself, this is a very, very strongly collaborative program that was built in partnership with many of our ecosystem institutions. So for example, the Chicago Quantum Exchange, University of Chicago, University of Illinois, Argonne, all of these institutions bring really deep technical expertise, a wide bench of technical experts, as well as facilities that the startups can benefit from. The Polsky Center is U Chicago's innovation arm that's affiliated with the Booth School of Business. And we're working really closely with Booth that has a long history of entrepreneurship education, as well as Argonne and UIUC have a long tradition of commercializing technologies. So together, we think we're creating a really great program, and together we have global networks to really help these startups expand. And the other way again. Just to tell you a little bit about the commitment from these institutions to make this a successful enterprise startup. All of the leadership from each of these institutions is on our governing board and weigh in regularly on how the startups are functioning, how the accelerator is functioning. To us, this is a sign of confidence and promise to continue to support our efforts. We also have an external technical advisory committee, which consists of experts from various disciplines, various backgrounds, both within quantum and outside of quantum. They're kind of helping us keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in this field. Their role is to give us advice on startup selection and how we're designing the program. We are really grateful to the people who are serving on this committee because they've been so enthusiastic. And some of them are in the audience today, certainly at this conference today. Coming to the program itself, as I'd mentioned, it's a 12-month program. We kicked off in July of this year. In the first, each startup that enters this program is given $50K in non-dilutive funding. And in the first 3 months of the program, it's structured sort of like a traditional accelerator program. So the startups go through structured training sessions on various entrepreneurial topics. You know, how do you structure your cap table? How do you think about IP and licensing? How do you grow a diverse team? They're assigned a business mentor. This is an experienced business person who works with them to sort of distill all this information that's being thrown at them to help them prepare a roadmap for the year ahead, 5 years ahead. And then throughout the 12-month program, these startups have access to a large roster of mentors who've been curated to bring expertise, technical expertise, domain expertise, as well as entrepreneurial expertise. I will go through that. We have some very interesting programming elements. And then just to circle back, as I said, to what I've learned from our startups, what I see overwhelmingly is that these startups at initial stages are their teams are very, very science heavy. So the people on the teams are either fresh PhDs or even mature researchers who are working really hard, 22 hours a day on trying to build their product or understand what it should be. As the startup matures, they bring in more sort of engineering talent, people who have the ability to iterate processes, develop new processes on old processes, maybe at master's level, not PhD level. And then as it grows even more, then comes in like the business talent. They start to look for kind of non-technical talent. Most of our startups work a lot with interns. The people they hire are from their own networks, people they've met at events they've hosted or organized, hackathons they've gone to, former lab groups. And I'm saying this all to kind of come back to my original point about ecosystem. This is why it's really important to have startups be in a strong ecosystem where they can easily come across these people. And also, these interns who are working for these startups will in the future be future workforce at a company or at another startup. And of course, these startups who are working incredibly hard to advance technologies could in the future also be workforce for bigger companies as they get acquired or they decide to go a different way with their company. But I'll stop with that. Hopefully I didn't go too much over time. Thanks so much.